Well, good afternoon. Welcome to a pre-Christmas or holiday treat for you all. Link to the Past Randomizer as part of the daily race set. Have we got actually quite a nice setup here for everyone involved. We have Moogle versus Jesse, Erotical Sniper 99 in a open spoiler race. Extremely competitive mode, extremely punishing mode, but extremely also very fun. This should be one heck of a time. Moogle and Jesse, actually very, very familiar with spoiler log. Jesse, I believe, actually was somebody who actually made it quite far in the earlier SGL online tournament. I think lost in like losers bracket round 3, which is actually, I think at least top 8 or something like that. Moogle, as you might have seen, certainly very common thing for league stuff. I should probably argue be one of the best pilots for spoiler logs out there. So very, very familiar with being able to parsing a log and formulating a plan. So it should be a lot of fun to watch. I am, of course, joined by Ira here on commentary, and then, of course, Solid on tracking. Ira, how's it going?
It's going well, Clear Mouse. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Like I said, so I mean, I don't know how popular I guess like spoiler is in the I guess like a gamut of like the 5,000 different modes that we have for randomizer, but it's certainly a personal favorite. So
Yeah, and as we see on Jesse's side and Moogle as well, pretty tough to find that flute in this.
Oh yeah. It is. It's definitely one of those things where I think, at least for maybe something like pilot spoiler, you kind of have a fixed opening or something that you prefer. In this case, for regular spoiler, you have 15 minutes of study period. So yeah, even if you can't find the flute at like the the second search or something that you're going for, I'm sure you can probably muddle your way through the log within 15 minutes to go find that very, as you said, very valuable item.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding any kind of mobility early in a seed is pretty invaluable. Because again, like as we were discussing prior to the seed, like these spoiler races, the players are often living on the razor's edge. Health is limited, resources sometimes limited.
For sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, trying to find your way to get around places as quickly as you can is pretty important. And we did see some free bombs in Sank and a free fire rod just hanging out in the woods.
Yeah, the opening, as you said, is actually very, very kind. Flute and Link's house. Obviously, you mentioned mobility. Any type of, and the margins for a spoiler are very razor thin, as well as basically anything else. So any type of mobility that you can get is really going to be able to help cut down on your time. Bombs, certainly very nice to see, just because you don't have to necessarily scramble for them. If something is like bomb locked in Kakariko, which I didn't actually end up checking, or anything like that. But if you do need them, you don't have to necessarily go scramble for them. They're also just bombs in the well. That's super nice.
Yeah, bombs, hammer as well. So, pretty good start here. You'll definitely take that extra heart that you pick up. Any extra health. I mean, we did see our tracker Solid has already marked our pendants and crystals. All 3 Light World dungeons are crystals. But any extra health that you can have going into these fights early in the game is also invaluable.
Oh yeah, no, you're definitely right about that. Big thanks, big shout outs to Solid for doing all this, because normally, we might get a quick map check from our runners, maybe kind of check out what the pendants and crystals are. They have the log this time. We're definitely not going to get a map check. I mean, we could. It certainly probably would not be intentional. So big thanks to Solid for, of course, marking everything else on the map or on the tracker as well. Noted, for what it's worth, we might also need to pay attention to the 5-6 crystals that are available out there as well. So just maybe, keep that in mind, for that might be a higher priority. I'm not sure how soon they're going to go for it, but it is something that we might have to go look out for.
Yeah, we did see both players pick up the lamp in the back of the tavern. Jesse did grab a 5th heart from Chicken House. Moogle's passing on that for now, at least.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And again, I think this is actually part of the spoiler log, or how one plays a spoiler log. It probably really does pay to be honest with yourself if you really think, because so in the grand scheme of things, like maybe picking up an extra heart container, especially in Chicken House, maybe isn't that expensive in terms of time cost. Probably costs, I don't know, let's say like 30 seconds or like 25 seconds or something like that. If that heart container especially is between like you and dying, 100% worth it. Then again though, if you think you maybe can skate by without that heart container, that's kind of like the time gain that you you can get back, for you, right? But it just kind of increases the risk a bit, and it kind of depends in this case, like how confident you are in this case in terms of execution. We've seen,
absolutely.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like we've seen certainly spoiler races especially come down to a handful of seconds potentially being different. Certainly could be higher variance because, again, if you end up dying, that's like minutes of difference versus, maybe like seconds of difference. But, then again, if the seed is just either like straightforward or there's little over risk, sometimes you can actually get too many safeties, right? In this case, anything you don't necessarily need is going to be kind of time that you're giving to your opponents.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, especially myself as a newer player to the spoiler mode, I think I definitely found that early on. It's like got to get safeties, got to protect yourself, and then you wind up with stuff you don't actually need, and that's what experienced players like Moogle and Jesse and many of the others who were in this race as well are able to bracket out. But we do see both players coming in here to Crystal Eastern without a bow.
Yeah, without a bow. Very very interesting. I know that certainly some people in the community may not have the propensity to dip Eastern Palace without at least all the equipment to make it clearable. Looks like though either there is no convenient bow that we're willing to get, or this is going to be a forced double dip of Eastern Palace. Lamp is certainly going to be pretty helpful. I have every confidence that, especially for Moogle and Jesse being, among other things, like, slew of accolades to their name, but invitational league players for, quite a few times, can get through this dark room, but, the Lamp is always going to make things faster.
Yeah, for sure. And both players here heading to the vanilla big key chest for what looks like a vanilla big key.
That is, yeah. Oh, by the way, I don't know if this actually matters though, because I didn't actually see if we needed money for anything specific, but I did see that Moogle was kind of going out of his way to even pick up some, like, blue rupees. If we need money along the way, either it's very, very tight, or we're just gonna need every single piece we can get. Well, we do in this case find a mirror. Kind of interesting in this case that Moogle... Wait, did Moogle... Oh, no, he did mirror as well. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Does make sense. See, this is actually another benefit of the spoiler log for what it's worth, right? Maybe, if you're playing the seed blind, you would try. Granted, maybe on this kind of health, it matters matters much less. But maybe you want to try and set up a death warp, right? And maybe try and take a bit of extra damage, and then you get to the middle big chest, and then it's the mirror, and you're just like, oh well, great. I wish I knew this ahead of time.
Yeah, a typical seed, that mirror is probably pretty close to a last location for the players too, because that's just, as we see, both are immediately heading up to the mountain to utilize said mirror, and yeah, that is what for me makes watching spoilers so interesting. Again, utilizing the knowledge that you have, making these decisions, and again, trying to parse a coherent route in 15 minutes. It's so impressive.
Oh yeah, no, that for sure. And I think this is actually kind of okay. Well, let's just okay. We got a whole minute of Hera basement time to ponder many things about this log. Apparently, because we also have you talk about actually Eastern Palace Big Key Chest being the last location. I'm not sure how willing people are gonna sit through Hera basement. Oh wow, what a cheat, dude.
If you find that mirror and it's like the mountain lights up green, and what are you immediately drawn to? Hera basement.
Exactly.
Yeah, Hera
yeah,
basement.
you have
so
mirror,
I can go up
you have
Hera.
hammer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, looks like actually Jesse. I don't. Oh, maybe he's trying to set up like a quick safety or something, or maybe we're just gonna dodge our whole way through. It's okay. You gotta find something to entertain yourself with, right, for this basement. Yeah, but kind of like back to what you were saying about the spoiler log. I mean, certainly, Jesse and Moogle, very, very experienced runners. They have high familiarity with how to deal with the log, how to like find things quickly, and so they're within the 15 minutes. Like, it might sound like a lot of time, it actually isn't, because you're definitely trying to scramble. Like, you do the item discovery phase. You also want, as you mentioned before, you want to try and after you figure out where all the items are that you think you need, you want to try and basically find an efficient route, to kind of loop at everything. These guys have certainly been, like I said, a lot of experience, and I think it's also brought up in League before, was parsing and trying to figure out the spoiler log is a different skill set, than just kind of randomly, playing rando, right? Like, even if there's another new mode that that someone has introduced and made, you play a couple seeds, you're like, oh, okay, I can, like, all the combat's the same, right? All the mechanics are the same. Trying to figure out where all the things are in the spoiler log is very different, right? Than basically just, like, playing rando.
Yeah, there's so many tiny little things that you don't even think about. As you said, looking for the items and then trying to come up with a route. And like a sneaky thing I found is late game, getting to like especially the deep dark world dungeons and making sure that your route within that for finding keys and stuff is important too.
Oh yeah, that's definitely very, very true. Yeah, and sometimes I think like, of course, when you go in open spoiler, it's not key sanity. Right, it's just regular keys, which means all the keys are within their dungeons. But that being said, though, like you still like in pod, which we are gonna go beat today. We have to you still have to go get the big key from somewhere. You still have to go get the small keys that you need to go beat the dungeon. And pod routing, I mean, that's probably the most common dungeon routing case that you would come up with. But it's very, very interesting, right? Depending on where the small keys are. You can definitely lose like a lot of time or gain a lot of time versus your opponents, depending on which keys you end up going and what route you end up taking.
Yeah, so we did see for both that Hera was just a dungeon beat there. So heading to East Death Mountain, Paradox Cave. See if that will get us Dark World access finally.
Yeah, I certainly think it looks very convenient, considering we have the mirror access to go up the mountain. That being said, though, I do see on the tracker it is a 5/6 crystal, so probably again, more reason in order to do this a bit maybe earlier than later, especially if you're going to want Pyramid Fairy. Speaking of, Google, please don't die. Yeah, we are also maybe looking for Pyramid Fairy money, which is 100 rupees. We're gonna probably need some pod money eventually as well. This is an extremely loaded Paradox game. Oh my.
Well, yeah, I mean, mitts at the bottom, Ice Rod, Blue Mail, and Moon Pearl. We're hoping to not need that Ice Rod, but both players do have it.
Good point. Good point. I did now notice that Turtle Rock is a pendant.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially in this case, if it's just Paradox, though. I mean, look at all those other items we ended up getting. It probably is just like, let's just get everything. It's very, very cheap. I do see Moogle. It might look like a scouting, for Meyer Medallion. I think it was just trying to avoid, in this case, the bird, and Jesse was very brave to use the hammer. Oh, wow. Alright, well, it looks like we might be like nickeling diving our way into pod or Pyramid Fairy money, so we're literally picking up like every single random money drop that's more than one.
Yeah, Moogle does have Kiki money. Jesse right now a little bit short. But yeah, Moogle is heading to pod.
Yeah, looks like it's gonna be a potential pod Eastern clear. Nice. Nice weave between the Snapdragons. I have been told that it is free. That is what I've been told. It seems like everyone is... I'm seeing more and more people able to just basically do that. Apparently you just hold upright, I guess, when you walk. So it looks really dangerous, but apparently it's very safe. That's what I've been told.
Yeah, that's what I've been shown too. It still scares the heck out of me when I play,
same,
but
same.
it still scares me to watch everybody else do it as well, but...
Yeah. I guess, like, the good news is for Moogle, the Snapdragons, I believe, only do 3 hearts of damage, and so, at least you're not going to just... Anytime when you're on one-hit KO mode, it is, like, super scary, right? Because, like, especially in this case, you just are... You don't want to take a Death Warp on the overworld because it is a significant loss of time. Although speaking of though, I mean, so how Moogle either got more fortunate with their drops or just better planning. And like I said, we kind of nickeled our way into pod money for him. Jesse ended up having kind of stop by Hype Cave in order to go get some more cash. I mean, so we can actually see in this case maybe just the fact that Mughal had pod money by the time he wanted to go to pod, didn't have to make an extra detour for that.
Yeah, I mean, those are just, those little details, because you're not really going to be working your way out of, an ideal route to try to loop in 20 rupees here, 20 rupees there. But at some point, there are certain places, entrance to pod, sometimes the day game, sometimes chess game, hopefully never Zora, but sometimes Zora, where you do need that money. And Mughal, I did think he did get maybe an extra 20 rupee drop from somebody. But that little time save. I mean, Jesse is totally set for money for the rest of the seed. He's good. Mughal is grabbing some extra, so always good insurance. If you do get into a situation where you might need a potion or something.
Yeah, that's definitely good. And then, but right, and actually, this is actually very, very good call. Actually, again, good planning on Mughal's part because there is money in the back of pod, 240 something, maybe just 240. And so, like, again, if we need money for other things, in this case, as long as Mughal has entry to get in, and plus the big key was back there, so you have to go to Ruby Basement anyway. Very, very efficient for you to basically get the rest of your money. That being said, though, like, Jesse doesn't have to necessarily farm anything extra for that. He could just go grab the big key. I mean, so he does get a little bit of time back. But oh my gosh, we have our first sword.
Wow, swords, they exist.
I know they do.
What a treat.
Yeah. Certainly no disrespect to the hammer because that's like 3 swords worth. It's just also it might be also maybe having 3 beers equivalent to being able to use it in terms of hitbox. So
yeah, so unless there's something on Helma, it looks like the sword is pretty much it from pod.
Yeah, that's what it looks like as well. And yeah, that the sword, any early sword is probably pretty invaluable or valuable. Yes, they both mean the same thing, right? In English. Yes, that's how good English goes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, but like you always definitely want some sort of a permanent melee weapon that's reliable, even if it doesn't do that much damage. At least every single time you swipe at something and it doesn't die, you at least get just a little bit of extra iframes, right? It's very, very good for both offense and defense. Yeah, but I think you might be right in this case. Certainly kind of nice for both runners. Didn't have to necessarily do any hammer yumps. Not, again, Mughal and Jesse, very, very capable of doing this. It's just kind of like one of those other things where if you don't have to do it in dungeon, very nice to just, get in and get out as basically as fast as you can.
Yeah, and this pod was pretty efficient too in terms of routing. Like you said, pod can be very tricky depending on how the key layout is. But both players were able to work in getting the big key as well as picking up that sword without really having to go too far out of their way.
Oh yeah. You see, actually, Mughal, again, just kind of picking up some extra resources. I think this is actually one thing, especially, this is what I've been told from more experienced runners, especially is resource management is very important. Runners, especially if you do pilot spoiler, seem to be much more aware or conscious of this because when you don't necessarily you just kind of get to some like bare bones stuff, anything like extra drops or something, you never really know when they're going to come in handy.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Again, it comes back to that whole thing, like, are you really going to be routing in 3 bomb packs, 10 arrow packs?
Yeah,
you really aren't.
Exactly.
You want to be skipping that. But if an enemy right in your way, like the turtles downstairs are dropping arrows left and right, snag a few, save yourself some pickups in Eastern.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point too. For what it's worth, probably more recent addition earlier this year to the spoiler log. So the spoiler log itself has a lot of information. Has certainly the basics, right? The pendants and crystals, where all the key and item layouts are. It actually does have tree rupees as well, like tree pulls. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. The rupee crab. You can even has a fish save, and this one also does have the prize packs for the enemies. So then, like, if you end up seeing, let's say, if you need maybe some bombs, and the guards just happen to drop bombs, maybe on your way to Kakariko, could actually be another potential way to maybe, farm yourself an extra, set of ammunition. Just kind of another one of the things where you can use that to basically try and plan out your routes.
Yeah, I remember when that was introduced, it was really neat to see. It's always amazing how many additional things get added and how, especially the top players can employ that.
Oh yeah. I mean, right, and it's especially for again like certainly Moogle and Jesse, again very experienced with it. It is just like that much kind of extra layer of optimization that they're able to do basically just with another piece of information. Yeah. And actually, speaking of arrows, right? Potentially, we saw kind of see Moogle did this earlier with Helma as well. Jesse also employing using arrows for phase 2 of Helma. I certainly don't blame them. We have only the hammer, which is again, it might be a DUI item, as in like it might be maybe a bit wonky, and then using basically a bow is much more like reliable to be able to shoot. So you really kind of want the extra ammunition and safety.
A hammer for that final phase of Helmasaur is again another one of those tight precision things, as you noted. When you're low on health, maybe don't take that risk. Get through this fight, safely. They both did a great job using the bow.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree to that. Yeah, and I will say for what it's worth, like so right now, kind of like Moogle being only on 4 hearts versus Jesse 6. If he wanted to try and use the hammer, he probably actually could have. It's just because he has a bit more like buffer in terms of safety. So Helma does 2 hearts of damage. So if Jesse ended up getting hit once, even twice, he would still be okay. And so maybe he wanted to try that for an extra, like maybe going after only a couple hammer hits versus a couple bow hits. But still, I think they still did a phenomenal job basically with the bow. Speaking of bow, oh no, Google.
Oh, that one Armros Knight did not want to get involved here.
Okay, we did it.
Yeah, that's 3 crystals on the board for Moogle. Jesse right behind. As you did note early, I mean that is both 5/6 crystals already collected. So it'll be interesting to see if Pyramid Fairy is something in play in this seed.
Yeah, speaking of, I think that's exactly where we're gonna go in this particular case.
Yeah, that's another sneaky thing that we didn't actually mention earlier. We mentioned it as a possibility, but that's another 100 rupees that are required. So both players doing a good job of making sure that that's something that they had to accounted for.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned, right, Jesse found 300 in Hype Cave in the back. He has basically set up the entire seed. He doesn't necessarily have to worry about where he's gonna find the rest of his money. Versus Moogle, he still did a good job planning. Oh no, Red Eye Guard. Terrible enemies here at Eastern. But it's just maybe a bit more, let's say, like mental strain for Moogle to try and 5 rupees here, 20 rupees there in order to try and piece together his money. Still probably ultimately end up working out a little bit better for him, and just because he didn't have to go to Hype Cave for it. But certainly can be a bit more stressful at the very beginning. And if that's not something you want to put your mind to, it's actually probably just better for you to just get your one money set. I'm gonna go to Hype Cave and just don't worry about it. And continue to play your game.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, especially not only the money that you need now, but again, the potential costs. You're living on 4 hearts here. You may need a potion or something later in the game.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. And also, by the way, like keep. Yeah. Oh no, yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, yeah, you keep in mind also that while the runners have 15 minutes of study period, they do have they still can look at the log once the game starts. It's just that that's when the timer actually starts for you to play the game. Yeah, we're gonna definitely need those flippers for Swamp. But in this case, keep in mind it's still them playing the game. It's not like they have a buddy or a pilot to help them. They are their own pilot or whatever they write down in their own notes, right? That's your that's the kind of route that you kind of determine in the 15 minutes. And it is certainly very possible to, let's say, forget something, right? Hasn't happened so far. I certainly don't want to wish any, ill will on any, on either Moogle or Jesse or force any of the other, I think 9 other people. There's a total of 11 people in the race room, with some very, very heavy hitters for spoiler, or of course Rando in general. Gamma's there, Shady there, is there, Humbug's there. I think those are kind of the top people, at least top set of people that were there. Moogle also, I think, being very pragmatic and grabbing a sword from Waterfall Fairy and a heart container. Probably care more about that heart container than anything else at this point.
Yeah, Moogle's done a really good job of picking up these extra things that can help them along the way. Even in Pyramid Fairy, Jesse will probably do the same, but taking note that there's 10 arrows right next to the flippers. That's free resources right after you came out of Eastern. You never know when you're gonna find. I mean, we've seen a lot of enemies dropping arrows, but
I certainly don't want to call any attention to Jesse's screen or anything because he got Samaria and then he was walking down the pyramid ledge. And then again, you don't have any person or anybody else helping you, reminding you that, oh, hey, when you get to this area, make sure to grab, both Samaria and Pyramid Fairy. I mean, very thankful that Jesse kind of caught it in time. Again, this is kind of one of the perils, right, of being able to run spoiler solo. Okay, so this is kind of interesting, I think, on Moogle side. We do see a capital P in the upper left-hand corner of Ice Palace, so we do know it's a pendant. And so Moogle is specifically coming in here for something.
Yeah, I believe it's a green pendant at that.
True.
Yeah, that's the thing about the spoiler, right? They're in a pendant dungeon for a reason. That's the third sword, tempered sword.
Interesting
that's very
pickup.
interesting. Yeah.
So again, this is one of the benefits of I think really one of the highlights. I think being able to see people raise spoiler is so everybody has the same information, right? And at their disposal, and they have 15 minutes, the same 15 minutes everybody else has, in order to try and pick out their route. And to certainly certainly play to your personal, what you think what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you're most comfortable with. Because we actually did see Jesse just go get nothing apparently so far from after he got Master Sword and right so, but he did not dip Ice Palace, right? So maybe in this case that Jesse thinks that the extra dip or the investment into go and get Tempered Sword out of Ice Palace is not worth it. I mean, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a calculus for where is the fourth sword. Because you'd definitely rather prefer finishing the seed on tempered rather than Master Sword.
For sure.
And we see both players burning their magic, picking up a mushroom. I think we know who we're visiting right now.
Well then, yes, and coincidentally, this magic bat is actually in just a mere transition away. Wow. Okay, so this powder is. Must be terrible. If we worked all the way over here in order to go get Samaria, and while I cannot personally condone doing magic or fake powder, any regular seed, if you know where the powder is and is basically not accessible, especially for those boots.
Oh my goodness.
Gosh. Okay. All right. I'm willing to just to eschew my morals just for I just won't look for the first 45 seconds. Those boots. Oh, how rough are these?
I don't know. I think fake powdering for that should get you pseudo boots.
Oh, okay. You know what? That's a great point. I will, and then we can go get real boots later. You're right. Yeah. I actually like that idea. Yeah,
fake powder for fake boots. I mean, exactly. You still run. You just can't bonk or anything.
Yeah, so. Exactly. We had pseudo powder for pseudo boots. That's exactly how it should be. All right, let's go get the devs.
It's high priority. Put that on the top of the docket. So, both players are pretty fairly even up here now as we approach the dungeon, with the significant difference being Moogle's sword.
Yeah, we can actually see in this case, right? So you mentioned in terms of actual, let's say like crystal or progress, right? Especially within the Thieves Town, Moogle is I don't know, like 1 to 2 screens basically behind Jesse, but as you did mention, that Tempered Sword difference certainly will eventually start yielding some fruition, because all the boss fights are going to be faster. Not Blind himself, because did you know that Blind actually takes the same damage from any sword that you use?
I did, but it was revelatory to me.
Yeah.
I've heard it's a scripted fight too.
I did also hear that Blind, in fact, will do exactly what if so long as you do the same thing, it will do the same thing back to you. So yes, I had heard that it was also a scripted fight.
That's wild stuff. Oh,
it is. Yeah.
That is Yeah, that's putting the players here. Quake Medallion for Meyer away from Go Mode.
Ooh, yeah, interesting point. Yeah, that's also very true. Yeah, because we ended up just picking up the hook shot. That is, of course, necessary for Swamp Palace, and they can understand that we don't want to go into Swamp Palace, even in a regular seed, you don't want to go in there without the hook shot, but certainly now, especially in spoiler, you know you should not go in there without the hook shot unless it's like a forced double dip or something. But I think you might be right. We have Desert Palace entry, which is a flute plus mirror, and of course we have everything we need to go beat Desert. Right. So and right now I think we're just missing that Meyer Medallion for Quake. Going to be also interesting to see where the good dodge from Moogle. Gonna be also kind of interesting to see where the silvers are because yes, like. And also where the fourth sword is. If the fourth sword is, again, somewhat buried, the difference between a Master Sword and Temper Sword, yeah, it's going to be, a fairly non-trivial amount of time difference. Let's say, especially on, for Ganon. If you have silvers, at least for Phase 4, that can kind of mitigate, some of the time loss that you have, Master Sword silvers versus Master Sword silverless. But so maybe Jesse's willing to go get silvers if they're somewhere, available. And just maybe just eat, in this case, not take the Temper Sword game.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me to watch, the players make their different decisions, the calculus that goes into it as to what they can handle in different situations, and what they're comfortable with, and what they think makes more sense time-wise. And listening to those conversations that happen after races is always really intriguing. Yeah, but it looks like Swamp Palace is up next here for both Moogle and Jesse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of unfortunate, like, just because the flippers were in Swamp Palace, you have to basically make 2 separate trips out to Pyramid Fairy and then also Swamp Palace. Like, so, normally in a more, let's say, like, the more efficient way, I guess, of trying to route in Pyramid Fairy is you would do Swamp Palace first, and then you would rush up to do Pyramid Fairy, just because you don't have to, re-enter. Like, running back from Pyramid to go to Swamp Palace is very, very slow, right? So then, you can kind of combine this, but of course we can't, right? Because the flippers were in Pyramid, and so you had to run all the way up there and basically come back and enter the Dark World again. It is what it is, right? It's forced, so you don't have to necessarily feel bad about it. It's just it just adds a bit more tedium to the scene.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's actually anything here. Again, we're still Quake away from Go. Is there anything in Swamp that, even if it's not the Quake Medallion, that's worth going slightly out of the way for?
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, is a very valid point, because, right, we talked about a lot of the, like, the major items, right? Oh, so we need Hookshot for Swamp, we need Quake Medallion to get into Mire, we need the Fire Rod in order to go do, well, actually, do we need the Fire Rod this game? Now that I'm looking at it? Well, okay,
no,
we
Moogle used it to get into ice, but that wasn't hard required.
Oh, true. Oh, very, very good point. Yeah. I was actually thinking, so you mentioned something about this earlier, was, margins can be razor thin in terms of, among other things, health and safeties. Moogle is sitting at blue mail 5 hearts, but that being said, though, if there is a heart container that is maybe either on the way or, like, pseudo on the way, he may actually be willing to get that. Versus Jesse, I think right now he's sitting at it looks like a pretty comfortable, well, spoiler level comfort of, 7 hearts total. May not, even if there is something, like a heart container that's kind of like, maybe it's a, one chest next room over or something, right? Maybe he's not willing to get that. But we can certainly see.
Yeah, we did see Jesse take the little bit of extra time to go pick up that powder in the room below the big chest, which is another nice safety. Especially in GT, where there are a few anti-fairies that you can powder. So we do not have a bottle on either side here. Both players do have the cape, but that's effectively it for safeties.
Yeah, kind of actually wonder now in this case where half magic is, if that's pulling something. I mean, cape is certainly very, again, you mentioned it's a very, very good safety, because it's there's no lag introduced certainly for using cape. It's a bit more expensive in terms of magic usage. So depending on how long you do use that cape, could actually be very expensive. And half magic certainly mitigates a lot of that cost. Very nice kill on Moogle's side. One of the powers of potentially actually that ice rod that you guys picked up.
Yeah, and we do see that difference in the swords here. Jesse's having a very nice fight with Master Sword, getting double puffs consistently. But it takes some time. And Tempered Sword, that single slash, can get rid of them. And Moogle did a very good job there of bracketing in that extra heart piece, so that the heart piece he grabbed from Argus was a refill for 6 hours.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Actually, yeah, so Moogle's probably is a very, very comfortable position right now. Yeah. Yeah, and as you did mention, right, so, Moogle's basically, I don't know, like minute-ish time investment, maybe a little bit like a 60, 90 seconds worth to go get Temper Sword for, in Swamp Palace, or in Ice Palace. Certainly seems very, very, it has certainly paid off for quite a bit. We also do get, okay, that is our go mode for, in Mini Moldorm Cave, from Moogle. We've got an Quake Medallion, and as you mentioned before, we got a bottle, too.
Yep, Moogle's, gonna put something in that bottle right away. But yeah, this play here to Mini Moldorm Cave, I think it fits in really well with what you were noting about routing things in earlier. This is clever on both sides. I mean, it's available pretty early in the game, but do it right after Swamp when you hit go, and then jet off from there rather than bouncing around from place to place early in the seed.
Yeah, also very interesting that both Moogle and Jesse ended up picking up a bottle. I mean, maybe Jesse will end up going to the potion shop as well. Especially maybe if we're not going to go get Tempered Sword basically before. Yeah, and man, speaking of Tempered Sword, unless it's going to be a sword that shows up somewhere soon, at least for Jesse, or a bow for that matter, the Vitreous fight, it's really looking like Tempered is gonna hold its value or worth significantly more so. I mean, Argus certainly is one of the more classic bosses that you would want Tempered Sword fight, as you mentioned earlier, right? 1 slash versus 2 for each of the puffs, but I'm kind of looking at Vitreous, and Tempered Sword is very, very preferable to anything else, maybe other than Silvers.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, both these players have, as we've noted multiple times, exceptionally skilled. I mean, 2 players who were key parts of playoff teams in the Invitational League. Very experienced, outstanding players. You put them in tough environments, and they still find a way to make the game look easy. But spoiler races come down to tiny margins, and
oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Knocking out these fights as efficiently as you can is often like a big part of the time save I've seen in spoiler.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely true. And yeah, and as you mentioned, both Moogle and Jesse extremely talented. I've certainly been playing the game for quite some time. It just happens to be in this case like Moogle seemed to be, at least so far for him, has made a very good investment in terms of getting Tempered Sword. Because we actually see the basically significant speed ups for boss fights. As you mentioned, Jesse did a phenomenal job on Master Sword. It's just that you just cannot compare basically like the Tempered Sword fight versus the Master. Even like the best Master Sword fight, right? Can certainly lose a little bit of time to I would say even probably more average Tempered Sword fights. Speaking of though, we're not sure in this case we're gonna get spooky. It's fine.
Yeah, we did see Jesse attempt a hover there after picking up the big key. Unfortunately didn't hit it, but it would have been cool if he did.
Yeah. Gotta use those boots as much as we can, because, well, we didn't get boots until... Okay, so I think... So in the spoiler log, it showed that the powder was in Swamp Palace, and so, like, we had to even fake powder in order to go get, like, our boots. So I think that, we might be willing to, wait or use them as much as we can. Moogle, okay, he's using the cape, certainly to his benefit, and he does have a blue post. Oh my gosh,
boy.
Moogle.
Oh boy. Never a doubt.
Everything's fine. We talked about margins,
Yeah. Hey, that's 6 heart came in clutch there.
Moogle used everything in his arsenal in order to survive. All right, speaking though, so Jesse also ended up coming in, so he's also using the cape. He's going to do a slightly different strat, it looks like. So if you keep slashing with the sword, the cape actually drains less magic than, I guess, if you just, do nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely time consuming, but it's the safest route.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since he didn't come in there with full magic, I believe. So, again, don't take chances. Let's not get cute with the with the Vitreous fight.
Yeah, and Vitreous, probably anybody who's like played this game, even just even like casually a little bit, Vitreous is probably one of the most punishing boss fights to take a death on. So you really don't want to go back and repeat this. Not only, of course, for the dungeon itself, but also for the boss beat, especially in spoiler. It's kind of a little, maybe even in regular rando, maybe you die to a boss, you're like, okay, you know what, let me go do something else. Let me go get some, maybe by the time I come back, I'll have like some more safeties or whatever. Like that doesn't really jive. I think in spoiler, you don't probably have that luxury, right?
No. So. Yeah, we did see in Desert that those boots on Magic Bat were indeed hard required because big keys on the torch. So that's a fun logical chain that the game wanted you to do to get those boots to be able to actually beat Desert Palace.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point. I forgot that Deserts could be boot locked, and yes, in fact, it was boot locked. Okay, so we did in fact need those boots. You just hope that if the seed forces you to require boots to beat it, it's not like go mode.
It's not beat the 5/6s to go to swamp to find your powder to go to the bat to get your boots.
Yeah, but what besides having a spoiler lock, when would you actually think of this path?
Like, yeah, you would not think of this path. You would be doing all the other things. You'd find that Desert was boots locked. You'd be going everywhere, and then you'd eventually get to swamp in the bat, and then you'd be sad.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because actually, you actually talked about early game, right? If you were playing the seed without a log, right? Like you would be probably hard last locating Villa Bicky chest in Eastern Palace for that mirror, because we actually needed that mirror in order to get to Paradox, right? In order for our pearl, and then it would just be and then your next last location after you do all of the Dark Death Mountain and like Smith Chain and all of this stuff. It's just all basically stuff without boots, Yeah. And yeah, feels great. Thank you, spoiler log.
We do see both players now, 7 crystals in tow, heading up the mountain. Moogle, a little bit ahead, about a mountain climb in front of Jesse, and does still have that sword advantage.
Yeah, and again, especially for, granted, again, 15 minutes, probably for Jesse and Moogle, I mean, maybe for the seed, it's not so bad, but I mean, in general, it's less time than you might think you have. Just in this case, Moogle decided that the early Sword and Ice Palace was a good investment for him. And again, it's sometimes very hard to see these things, because, it's like, do I really want to go basically, 75 seconds, away out of my time in order to go into Ice Palace in order to go get, this Tempered Sword? Is it actually going to be worth it? Am I save that much? Am I going to save enough time basically doing that investment? Turns out in this particular case that he did, but, it's really hard to tell, right, before you end up playing the game.
Yeah, and that's really what separates, I mean, again, everybody who's in this race today is an excellent player.
For sure.
There are some who, as you noted, have had extreme success in this mode, and their ability to, break things down granularly to, how much time will this save versus that. And so we see Jesse heading into Hookshot Cave, so that's nice free big key. Half magic is nice.
Yeah, half magic actually, especially for Jesse, if he's not gonna go get the sword, actually might be kind of nice, right? Especially paired with the cape. If he's only gonna be on, I really hope he's not on Master Sword Somerless. But I guess if he is, again, that cape and plus half magic, I think is actually gonna be really nice for Ganon. He does have a potion, for what it's worth, so he does, it does have a refill, but, again, it's not really necessarily in a position you want to be, or especially in spoiler, your margin of error, as you mentioned, is actually could be very, very small.
Yeah, and the one extra thing that Jesse does have that Moogle doesn't, besides that half magic, is the powder from Swamp. So it's another extra thing that he could utilize on the climb if he gets into a tricky situation.
True, true.
Whereas for Moogle, he picked up that big key, grabbed the small key off the torch, and that was all he was interested in the basement. He is climbing.
Yeah, and actually, good point. So while Moogle does have a blue potion for himself as well, we did see that on especially his Vitreous fight where he was down to half a heart before he ended up finishing the fight. It is something that he does have to actually physically use, right? Consciously use, as opposed to like if you end up dying with a fairy in a bottle, it'll just auto revive you, right? So we kind of have to be in a position where Moogle at least has to have the ability to use the potion.
Jesse picking up that big key. He is heading to Compass Room here, so I mean, at this point, we have to think that there is going to be sword or silvers here.
Yeah.
Because you're not going this far out of your way if it's not one of these massively damaged is tempered sword.
All right, this is for tempered. Okay, so it's in Compass Room. Okay, so that's the fourth sword. Okay, so you certainly understand that if Jesse wants to basically go out of his way for this fourth sword here. That is certainly a viable option. That being said, I don't know if it's that much faster than doing map chest in Ice Palace with Samaria especially. And then given that Moogle, we're going to see the Moogle got Temper Sword early and was able to use it both for Argus and for Vitreous, like it's certainly to see that he got a lot of the time back.
Yeah, that'll be an very interesting thing to ask both players about there, because I'm sure that they both had we're making the same decision-making process of sword number 3, where where should I pick it up? And in this case, we had two runners here who made opposite decisions, but they both have I think merit in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And like, very few runners would actually only stop again at sword number 2. Like, yes, you only need 2 swords to beat the game, but I think as Dapper Warman is also pointing out in chat, Master Sword Ganon is doable. However, you can get that 3rd sword. It would be extremely beneficial, both in terms of safety, in terms of consistency, also in terms of speed. You can do a lot of stuff with Tempered. And yeah, more often than not, like because the game only logically places the 2 swords for you to be, accessible, the other 2 swords can be kind of bad. And then for you to make that decision for which one you actually go for, it certainly, can be a very significant difference between the 2 routes.
Yeah, Jesse got down to a couple hard 2's powder here, so we have the different setup here. He's going to try Samaria strats on land mode 2.
Actually, looked like maybe he got a good number of hits in. Let's see, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was just slightly off. It looked like a pretty good setup.
Yeah, but I guess in this case we do see actually a nice benefit of half magic. Again, you're not under a lot of magic pressure, right? Especially through the climb, and if you're gonna do basically powder there, the fire rod is your free reign, to be able to use. Certainly very interesting, by the way, that the fire rod. I guess I didn't see where Bombos was, but I guess like logically speaking, we didn't need fire rod, right? Which is it's not uncommon, right? But it's not as common, right?
Yeah. Depending on where Bombos is, as you know, like I guess those last 2 swords, the tempered sword for each player was fire rod locked if Bombos was inaccessible. Moogle makes a very short work of Aga too. That was a very nice fight.
Oh, yeah.
He took advantage of some good patterns. And he's into the Ganon fight. 6 hearts, does have that potion, as you know, does have that cape. We didn't see silver, so it'll be interesting to see where what Ganon tells us they are.
Alright, well, so Solid in chat, actually our tracker, who's done a phenomenal job today so far, by the way. He has mentioned that Bombos is in Moldrum 2 chests. So yeah, I guess that sword was definitely fire rod. If you wanted,
if you wanted tempered, you're getting fire rod. I mean, again, like the players are skilled enough that we've seen torch strats on the road to Compass Room, but you're not taking the time to do that.
Oh, for sure.
In a spoiler race, that's for certain.
Okay,
if
so
we're
silvers are in rando room. Okay, that's
yeah.
very, very far. Like silvers
Yeah.
and tempered are like in opposite corners of GT. So like, I don't know if silvers would ever be worth it in rando room. I mean, unless of course you have 0 other choices for swords, but like that is very, very far. Basically, just to use for Ganon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would probably have to be that situation you mentioned earlier where the last 2 swords are so bad that you prioritize silvers and rando room as as effectively your last phase option.
Oh yeah.
But in this scenario, I think both players made the right call picking up a tempered sword.
Oh yeah. No, that's definitely true. Yeah. Yes, for basically phases 1 and 2 alone for Ganon, I think it basically already gets you your time back. And then, yeah, not to mention, of course, we certainly boss fights are a priority, but, just seeing through the gauntlet itself, right? Not everything dies to Master Sword. I mean, certainly less than the Fighter Sword, if you've been through, like, Sword Go mode. But, like, even we can kill everything, in 1 slash versus 2, just like Argus, right? You can kill everything in 1 slash versus 2. It is very beneficial.
Great job by Moogle Charm. Yeah, finishing off that Ganon fight.
Yeah, big GG's to Moogle. Certainly, seemed to have a pretty solid route this time. And, again, all of the safeties that he didn't need the potion per se, but he planned out his resources quite well. In particular, I think the pod money situation, he certainly was very, very conscious of and did very efficiently.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's just again, those little time saves. Jesse having to go a little bit out of his way there, and again, I think Moogle's play to grab that tempered sword, as you mentioned, saved him a good amount of time in a couple fights, and allowed him to, I think, be a little more aggressive too at the end of the game.
Yeah, that's actually a great point too. Yeah, I mean, so like we talked about health being, a resource. Extra health, right? Like maybe you don't necessarily need. Yes, in theory, you could have gone through, the entire game basically on, let's say, like 3 or 4 hearts, especially in this case if you didn't really ever get hit. But the fact that you just have that extra buffer, you're not in one-hit KO mode, as you mentioned, I think you can afford to be more aggressive, and so you have that buffer in order to take the risk. So if you do get hit, not going to be the end of the world, and then you kind of gotta fall back to being a bit more conservative. But just even having extra health is very, very useful. Yeah, Jesse's gonna finish up his phase 4 here.
Yeah, it's a really impressive fight by Jesse.
Yeah, oh yeah. These guys are invitational level players, especially for spoiler, in addition to spoiler, execution matters a ton. But yeah, big GG's to Jesse as well. Seems to be certainly like the major difference was that the delayed tempered sword does seem to be cost a little bit more time on the boss fights, but I mean other than that, looks pretty good.
Yeah, we did see Moogle come in, first here on the restream, 3rd overall. Gamachu the winner at just over, well, if we subtract the 15-minute time, 45-46, followed by Humbug, then Moogle, and Shady Force finished a mere 9 seconds ahead of Jesse. So Jesse came in 5th overall.
He got sniped, is what you're saying.
He did.
Alright, well, we are also joined here by Moogle. GG's, Moogle.
GG's.
GG.
And Jesse. GG's, Jesse.
GG's, both of you.
GG.
Good job fake powdering for boots. That was a terrible location.
With the timing for that. I really didn't know if I should have done it sooner, but then you got to go out of your way to get cane.
Yeah, the fact that if there was nothing in Pyramid Fairy, I think I'm with the idea of the early fake powder. Since C just handed you mitts, but given how long it would take to get back then for the flippers, I was like, let me just single dip that area, please.
I kind of was peeking at Gamma a couple times throughout. He got early boots. Feels like that was the right play in retrospect, but it was really hard to tell. I was debating, I was going to the mountain to get my boots and pearl. What to do. Otherwise, I thought it was not a bad seed. The other sword was what kind of I had to think about quite a bit. So I got the sword from Ice Palace. I think got the one in GT.
Yeah, I did the GT sword. I had thought about it. I was like, either one's not terrible. But I think the hard part was deciding on those two bosses. I'll be honest, my Master Sword Argus today was not stellar. Like, I'm fumbling a little bit with my hands today. I played my first seed in all week. Like, I've been sick and laid up most of the week, so like, so I played a mystery yesterday that was swordless, so having a sword today was nice, but Master Sword Argus is not exactly a fun fight. So maybe I should have taken that more into account and gotten the earlier sword, but
Well, it was what, in Compass Room, right? So it's funny because
I thought it was
P-Train had
Matt.
asked. No, it's in Compass.
Oh wait, are we talking my sword or yours? Sorry.
GT. Sorry, the GT
Yeah,
sword.
map
Yeah,
test.
sorry.
Or the
So-
compass room. Yeah, you're right.
In Compass. So like there was a P-Train had posted in the Tark Discord, like asking a question about, it's funny enough, I think it was swords in GT. And someone had timed out, I think it was Armalex had timed out the amount of time that it takes to get to Compass Room, and it was like somewhere in the range of 50 seconds. I don't remember the exact number, but somewhere around 50. I'm like, okay, so you're gonna have to get a key from somewhere. I think there was actually a key available, but you have to get a key and then you have to go to Compass. That's gonna take close to a minute. And then like Argus is gonna take longer, Vidi's gonna take longer. How long does it take to get that ice pellet sword? I'm like, it can't be that much more than a minute, maybe a minute and a half at the most. So,
Yeah, and that was kind of the math I was trying to weigh. Thinking about it, I was like, which sword am I really gonna get? And I was thinking, like, well, I'm gonna have a cape, I'm gonna have a bow, I'm gonna have the ice rod. Like, Argus won't be too bad, Vidi won't be too bad. Like the cape strats for Vidi worked perfectly. So like I thought the decision was good enough. But that's one of those things that like when I run against this mode against people like you and Gamma and them, it's like, those are the little things that I'm still trying to understand, like what makes you guys decide those over the others. And then afterwards I'm in a discussion with one of you and you go, well, yeah, this. I'm like, oh yeah, nope.
I mean, it's hard in the moment. Like I spent time thinking throughout the seed what swords were the best. And I don't even know if mine was the right choice, to be honest. It's like the way that I always do it, it's like if the time is very close, I'm just going to go with the safer choice. So like in this case, I can get an earlier sword. It doesn't take probably that much longer than the Compass Room one, given I'm going to have the sword for a good portion of the seed. In fact, I probably should have gotten it even before pod. And I would have had an even safer pod. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, Gamma beat us by like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
4 minutes, so.
I mean,
got a long
it's
way to
Gamma,
make up to it.
I just say that's what it is.
Sorry, we there's a couple commentators here. We just kind of took over.
No, it's great.
People are
No,
talking.
keep going,
No,
keep going.
we want to
That's
hear
what
your
makes the
thoughts,
interview
yeah.
easy.
And that's the thing though. This seed didn't leave a lot to the imagination for a route. Like sometimes there's a lot of flexion points. Like I'll be curious to see Gamma getting the boots when he did. You said he got them early. That's a curious choice because I wouldn't have thought how much earlier. But like if you do that before Eastern and Pod, and like I guess you save enough time to make it worthwhile.
Yeah. Yep.
But
And if you want to be hardcore, you don't even need the fire rod or ice rod this seed, right?
yeah,
So like you could have basically said no to that fire rod early. Obviously you're not doing ice balance at that point, but
nope.
Because I think Bombos was at the top of GT.
Yeah,
The
it was in GT at least.
Yeah, you wouldn't then have the fire rod though to get the sword on right side GT. So like maybe you take the time to get silvers in that case. It probably doesn't make sense to do that, but like you could have if you wanted to just completely skip the rods. I don't think it would have been the right choice, but
The fire rod was pretty free.
yeah, it was.
Like maybe you get really stingy with your route at a certain point.
You could have gotten
but-
with boots.
sure. I don't know.
I
Like,
got it.
when else am I going to Lost Woods?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
The
All
PvPs
the
are
Dark
pretty
World kit was in Light World, like very convenient Light World check.
Yeah.
No real tricks. Like, yeah, without a spoiler log, the seed wouldn't be fun. Blah blah blah. But like, you know, it's still not the worst to go and do each piece into the others. Like, with the log, this seed flows nicely. It's not one of those weird, like, tons of double dips. Like, the only double dip was Eastern.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you didn't like notice that right away, you're kind of screwed. But yeah. Sorry. Go
What?
ahead. The mirror? Like, oh, I need to get that mirror before I go to the map.
I mean, my style, like, I don't know, like, the right way to do spoiler log parsing, but, like, I find all the items and then I just start putting it together. So,
That's it. Paramount, you were saying something?
No. I think I was just gonna say, like, Ira was, talking about this earlier, but it's like, you guys wouldn't, like, just think to, brush the 5-6 crystals and then, go to Magic, and then go to Swamp, potentially, for the powder, and then go do Magic Bat to go get the boots? If you didn't have the log?
I mean, it would have been great to end up in Desert Palace and see that big key on the torch and go, where are my boots?
Well, like,
Good thing I
imagine
wouldn't.
if- Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, imagine if it was regular seed. You get that mushroom from Hammer Pegs, and there's gonna be some people tempted. Ooh, do I have fake powder here? If they have the cane, and there's a bunch of people who are like,
right.
never. I'm never fake powdering. Not gonna happen.
Here's what I'll say about that is I think that is and it's not all people, so I'm gonna preface this like I'm not trying to start a war. It's an invitational open question, I feel like. If I was an open runner, I probably would fake powder because I feel like I'd have to be a little more thorough in that regard. But like if I was racing you or Gamma or another invitational runner, I'd be like, nope, fake powder doesn't exist here, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you guys are going to do it. I wouldn't do it either.
Yeah. In the moment, like, I don't think you do it.
Nope.
You have to decide split second if am I doing fake powder here. I think most people would say.
I think one other thing that came up early in the seed that was just kind of interesting was Clear Mouse and I were talking a lot about how resource management is like one of these tricky little things because as Jesse noted, you're looking for these big items, you're trying to parse together a route. One thing that worked out a little bit better for Moogle was having money per pod, whereas Jesse had to make a quick pit stop at Hype Cave. Is that something that you guys as more experienced players like tend to bracket in early on, trying to find a way to get enough money along the way and bombs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've played enough spoiler. Like it comes with a lot of spoiler experience. There's so many times where I've gotten caught because I went to Bombo's tablet with one sword, or I tried to go to pod with no bunny, or all of those kinds of things, and I still forget now some of those things. But it was like, I don't know, I gotta go to pod early. I need to scrounge a little over 100 rupees. Like, where am I gonna get this stuff? And it was probably a minute before we were about to start the race where I was looking for some of this money, and all the 300s were in they weren't in, most of them were in bad spots except the Hype Cave one, and I was like, I really don't want to get that. Like, can I get a bunch of 20s on the way? And when I was in Eastern and those Stalfos were dropping they were dropping like 5 rupees, I was like, oh, nice. I went out of my way to kind of grab a couple of those, knowing I had to scrounge up some for pod. And then when I was in pod in the basement, I knew I needed money for the big bomb. So it's just like that kind of stuff that I was trying to think ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking like, okay, I'm going to get some bombs here. I think I should be good for the open to get me into pod. I'll refill my bombs for the rest of the seed in pod. Like, that's your bomb dungeon. money-wise, I was kind of like, okay, there's a little bit here, there's a little bit here, and I was thinking maybe I'll get lucky with pod. But I was mainly hoping, my backup was hype, and finishing that early game, and I think I was at, 90 rupees? And, you're 20 short, and unfortunately, it just doesn't work out. So you're like, okay, go to the backup. Hype NPC, that 300th perfect. It'll give me plenty to get through the rest of this. Just, that's... you want to look at the minute and a half between Moogle and I. There's at least half is me having to make a pit stop at hype. And maybe hitting up the Stalfos is a little harder or something like that could have made the difference in, me needing to get hype cave there. And then I just, maybe I weave a little bit more when I'm getting the pod basement money, and that's a couple of seconds longer, not the 30-45 seconds minimum for hype cave.
Yeah, in my notes I had basically right near where I had pod slotted in for the route, I put that there was 50 rupees in both Saha and Mini Moldorm Cave.
Oh, nice.
And we had to do Mini Moldorm Cave for the Quake, so I was basically, if I didn't have enough money, I was probably going to go to Mini Moldorm Cave and get that 50. And if I'm somehow even still behind, I had Saha as a backup. So yeah, that's where knowing that I needed that $100 kind of came into play there.
Cool.
But yeah, the hype cave was if Mini Moldorm didn't have 50, that probably.
Would you consider the back of Eastern at all?
I wouldn't.
The only issue with that is you have to do Eastern first, and then you got to go back to get Kiki.
True. Yeah. True.
Yeah, it takes some time.
Yeah, and it's really hard. It's not impossible, but bypassing Kiki is just a little
I guess maybe if you
uncomfortable.
get it the first time, because you were in Eastern to get the mirror, right?
The problem there was going all. I think Moogle and I both skipped right side that first trip.
Yeah, because I didn't know if I was gonna get the hook shot.
Yeah.
That was why I skipped it.
Yeah, I was there's a chance I could go get that hook beforehand, and then I got back there. I was was I really going to get the hook shot before making the Eastern return? Probably not, but it doesn't matter. You have to go through the front door and that front half portion twice anyway. So I didn't lose time or gain on it.
Yeah. I just had to remember. Because I've done that before where I skip the key, I'm going to come back with boots, and then I get to the big key door, and it's hey, you forgot your big key. Oh.
Yeah, thanks for racing though, guys. I mean, I think it was a very interesting scene. I mean, it was sorry about the late boots, but you at least got there a little bit faster.
Yeah. Well, thanks for getting us on. Thanks for doing comms. Happy holidays to everybody out there.
Yeah, happy last race before the holiday.
Yeah, definitely. Happy holidays to you guys. Yeah, hopefully you have a nice, extended weekend / week or whatever, you are able to get off of work or, time. But yeah, it was great. Thanks guys so much for playing. Thank you, Solid, so much for tracking. I mean, as always, master of basically keeping everything on track for us and honest. So, definitely big thank you to you. And thank you, Ira, for joining up basically last minute. Well, nice pleasant surprise to see you on commentary.
Yeah, no, this was a real pleasure, Clear Mouse. I was really happy to get to come with you and work with Solid again. It was again awesome tracker, did a great job. And yeah, GG's to Moogle, to Jesse, to everybody who was in this race, and hope everybody has a great holiday season here.
Yeah, see ya. Have a great happy holiday weekend.